When I was about 10 years old, I was having a conversation with a kid I sat next to at school, but little did I know that conversation would change the rest of my life. Now, this kid went on to be a maths professor at one of the world's leading universities, and we sat together for maths and for science and for everything else. We would do the tasks together, we would discuss the problems together, and we would move through the book together every single day. Only one day, I came into school to discover that he was 2 pages ahead of me. A little bit surprised, I said, "Why are you 2 pages ahead?" He said, "Well, I did a couple of pages at home." I said, "Why did you do that?" This idea being a little bit alien to me at the time because this wasn't really the kind of school that pushed homework too much. They believed that homework was for senior school, not for the junior school. And so I was a little bit taken aback and I said, "Well, why would you do this at home?" He said, "Well, it's called homework. You'll better get used to it because this is what you'll be doing in senior school." Now, obviously, everybody knows that you do homework at senior school, but at that age, I hadn't really come across the idea yet. Now, because he was 2 pages ahead, he sort of stayed ahead. But this idea didn't sit well with me, that someone else was going to tell me what to do when I was at home and how I was going to spend my time. And so I thought about that day and night. And whilst I did catch up with the maths work, I put the extra time in, break times, lunch times, and got back on the same page, literally. And we moved through together and continued to do well. Obviously, I went on to senior school, and whilst I didn't really do a whole great deal of homework at home, I obviously did do some work at home. But the idea was still in the back of my head that someone else was going to control what I was to do when I was at home in my own time, and I wasn't having any of it. So whilst he didn't mean for this one thing to have any impact on my life at all, it was just a casual conversation. And if you asked him today, he probably wouldn't even remember saying it. But that one thing probably changed my life. But it comes with a warning, because for me, I took that conversation and it helped to forge the life that I have now, which is that I decided what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, how I'm going to do it, with whom, when and why and where, and etc. But had I not really forged that path myself and been strong-minded and determined to make things work, it could have turned everything upside down and it could have been a very negative outcome. But instead, as a result, I have never really worked for any other company. I think I did the one standard week of work experience. I think I did 2 days at a company to decide I'm not working for a company before I just set up my own businesses and did consulting work. And then I've had businesses ever since. And there's various other phrases that people have said to me along the path throughout my life that have had further changes on my life, because I've since taken to having one of those phrases make an impact on my life, and I've used it to change and carve my path in the way that I want to. But the reason I say that this comes with a warning is that if that one thing that someone says to you, or the one conversation that you have, doesn't have a positive impact on your life, and quite the reverse, it sends you on a negative spiraling path downwards, that could be quite devastating. This conversation could have been quite devastating in that if this conversation with him gave me the same view of I don't like to do work, for example, and then didn't do work and became lazy and then never achieved anything, that would obviously be, I would be very, very different position right now. But instead, it wasn't the don't do work bit that I focused on. So any young people watching this is not a video telling you not to do your homework, quite the reverse. This is a video telling you you need to decide to do this work. But in my case, I decided when and why and where and how and with whom I was doing that work, for what reasons. And when it comes to business and everything else, it's what I charge for doing that work. What is it worth? Is your time worth what someone else says it's worth? Or are you going to determine what it's worth? Are you going to create the scenario, the business, the opportunity, the product, the service that then determines what your time is worth? And I get all sorts of comments here. I find it quite comical. I get a lot of positive comments, which I'm very grateful to everybody that leaves. And I get a lot of negative comments, which I find quite comical, because my first thought, oddly enough, is this person must not be very happy. Because to leave a negative comment and to make a negative comment towards somebody else, they cannot be living a very positive, happy life. My first thought is, how can I make that better? And one of the ways is to share these kind of experiences, which is, this happened, it could have been very negative and it could have been very positive. I tend to try to make these things as positive as possible. Anyone that knows me personally, hopefully, would tell you that I always try to focus on the positive things. There is always a positive way of looking at something, even if it's just, well, that's something we can deal with. Let's deal with that and let's move on. Let's look at it in a positive way. Let's not react negatively to it. Let's not fight about it. Let's just move forward with it. But every now and again, there are some of these negative comments. And as I say, my first thought is they cannot be living a very positive experience. And so my warning for this video with what people say to you, because not everybody has got such a strong mind and to cast off the negativity and to use it to forge a positive way forward and to create something positive. My message to you is, be mindful of what people say to you. And if it's negative, perhaps your first thought should be that they might not be living a very positive existence. And either you can help with that or you understand where it's coming from. Because you don't know what their situation is. You don't know what's just happened. You don't know how long they've been living in whatever state that they're living in. You don't know what's caused them to say such a thing or think such a thing. And so whilst they might make a statement, very often people making a negative statement are saying it to make themselves feel slightly better, or at least they think it will. It doesn't, actually. They think that it does. And some people live in that constant state of making these negative statements to try to make themselves feel better. But ultimately, that's just not going to work. It doesn't work. Saying something positive, doing something randomly positive, saying something randomly positive is actually a very good way of making yourself feel better, because in doing that, it is an inherently positive thing. But any one thing that someone says to you at any stage in your life can impact your life in a number of different ways. Hopefully it's a positive one. I try to take all of them as a positive one. And many of these things that have been said to me over the years have changed my life. And so that one conversation with this kid in maths class, who will probably never have thought of that again, probably forgotten it 5 minutes later, and almost certainly never, ever thought of that conversation ever again. And even if you were to tell him today, he probably wouldn't remember having it. But that one conversation probably changed my entire life. So be careful what you listen to. Be careful, more importantly, how you react to it. And even more importantly than that, what effect it has on you. Because it can be a positive one or a negative one. Let me know in the comments what things people have said to you, whether this has awoken any feelings, emotions, memories, questions, and I'm happy to respond to those. And there are lots more videos coming, so please do subscribe. I'll see you next time.